I was like,
Oh
look,
yeah.
you don't have the time for this. You don't, staff yourself up with good administrator, good people that can run kind of the day-to-day of the office, and then get out there and get more business. And tech people tend to be like, oh, I don't know how to sell. I don't want to go out and sell. Okay. So they give themselves so much work at the office. Oh, I can't get to the selling. I got to test this product. Okay. Let me tell you something. The customer is going to believe the technician before they're going to believe the salesman. Okay? They know when they're being sold to. A slick salesman, he might talk them into something, but when a technician comes in there, they pick it up really fast, and they know that he's telling them the truth, because he doesn't, he's not super fancy. He's like, look, this is what we're going to give you. This is what it's going to do for you. And this is what we're going to charge. Technicians say they can't sell. That's just not true. They can't.
Oh yeah. You're dead on. So today we've got Tim Taylor with us. Tim, tell me, how did you get wrapped up in this crazy MSP world?
Well, I was always in IT my whole career. I started programming on mainframes in college. The PC was invented the year I graduated. And
Nice.
so I went to California. I'm from Tennessee originally, went to California to work for a big nonprofit out there and was a mainframe programmer. And then one day somebody said, somebody wants a PC. Well, I knew a little bit about them, so I installed that one. And then somebody else wanted one. So suddenly I became the microcomputer department. So over the 13 years I was with that organization, I installed over 1,000 machines and servers. So
Now,
we had
what kind of year was this? What year was this?
that was in, I went there in 85, moved to California in 85, and they moved their headquarters from Southern California to Orlando in 91. So we landed here in 91, built a big Novell network. We were written up in Network Computing Magazine and some other stuff because we actually tied our network into the mainframe. So we were doing some things a lot of other people weren't doing at the time. And so, again, was with that nonprofit for 13 years, really enjoyed it. But nonprofit means nonprofit, the salaries were very low. I had my third child, and I just said, you know what, I need to get into another company. So I worked for they weren't called MSPs back then. It was a small IT company. So you would just do whatever needed to be done, billed by the hour. And after 1 year working there, I realized I can do this myself, So I looked for a book, How to Start and Run a Successful IT Company. I couldn't find it. So that's another part of the story here. But anyway, I was 40 years old. I had 3 kids. I had a mortgage. I had at least one car payment. And I had $500 in the bank. And I said, by God, I'm starting my own business or die trying. And so I jumped out there and I would just do anything. I would do anything. I started with one client that had about 25 machines and, Windows 95 days and all that stuff. So for many years, everything was billed by the hour. You just basically, you showed up when they called you, and I had a pager and then you did the work and you billed them for the hours. I just did billing every weekend, and, but the industry morphed, which was good. People got tired of not knowing what they were going to pay every month. And so I had one client that had about 50 machines, and I charged them $100 a machine. It was my first quote unquote managed service contract. And I said I would just do whatever they needed. But there was almost no remoting in back then. You had a problem, I had to come right to your desk to work on it. So, basically, that was kind of the beginning of it. We got ConnectWise at first, and was with them for a long time. And the whole industry just grew up around us. Now we've got we got about 11 or 12 staff, and we maintain about 1,500 to 2,000 machines. So,
all right, now let's go back. I want to go back to 84, 85. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
You're going to help me out a little bit. I'm usually the oldest guy in the room. You're just a smidge older than me, so I appreciate
I probably
that.
am.
Thank you. Okay. So in 85, we were a very, very lower middle class family. And there was no reason we should have had a computer. I don't know how we did it. My mom worked for a big company. One day, one of the IT guys comes by and says, hey, we got your computer. So I had Microsoft Flight Simulator on that thing.
Yes. Flight Simulator. Yep.
What was that? What would I have had for a computer? Like, I've never really thought about it until you mentioned it. What could it have been?
Well, the original IBM PC was the IBM PC, and everybody said IBM was crazy because they had their own operating system. It was called PC DOS.
Okay.
written by a little company called Microsoft. They just showed up at Bill Gates' office one day and said, "Hey, can you write an operating system for our PC?"
Yeah.
And he did. Okay, so
Yeah.
he actually bought it from somebody else, but
I remember that. Yeah.
CP/M was an operating system before DOS. It actually looked a lot like DOS, but it was called CP/M, and it would only run on an 8-bit processor, so the PC, had a 16-bit processor. But again, IBM wanted to have their own operating system, and so,
I see.
um, they came out with PC-DOS, and I programmed on an early PC.
Yes.
But, then they started building clone machines. It's funny you mentioned Flight Simulator because they built clone machines that worked, they were basically the same as the IBM PC, but usually they were a lot cheaper. Okay,
Right.
so one of the brilliant things that Microsoft did was after they wrote PC-DOS for IBM, they said, "Is it okay if we license this?" And we called it MS-DOS for other
Yes.
manufacturers. And
Right.
and uns and stupidly, IBM said yes, okay? And so they started making MS-DOS, and then clone machines started coming out. But I remember all the magazine ads, there was no internet back then. They would say, "Our clone runs Flight Simulator," which was
Yes.
kind of the acid test to tell
Yes.
whether or not it truly was compatible, you know?
That's right. Yeah, that MS-DOS, that rings a bell. Now let me ask you this. So you were working in offices, you were a professional in this. It seemed like in the home space, if you had a computer, you had that stupid chair that you would, like, sit at an angle and your knees would rest on. Do you remember? Do you have any idea what I'm
I
talking
remember
about?
that show. Your knees were on it, but there was nothing
Yeah,
behind your back.
right.
You were basically kind of balancing on your knees.
Uh,
Supposedly, it was good for your back. It would make
were
my
those
back.
in offices as well at the time, or was that just some gimmicky thing at home?
Oh, no, I saw some people that had them some in offices, yeah.
That's
I
so
guess if you look at it one way, maybe it helped your back, another way, maybe it helped build up your core because 'cause you're all day long,
sure.
you're kinda balancing on this thing.
Yes. Oh, it's so funny.
So you probably had one, that's why you remember it.
We had that's right. My posture is so wonderful today. That was fun. Now, were you a flight simulator guy back then?
Well, I loved it. Microsoft Flight
Yeah.
Simulator. It ran in DOS.
Yeah.
You just had you stick the flight simulator's floppy drive in, fired it
Yes.
up, and you were the first, one you took off from a little airport in Chicago,
Yeah.
and you could fly around that one of the big buildings there, the Sears Tower or something, and then
Yeah.
come back and land. And that was about all it would do, but it was all one color screen, no color, no
Yes.
mouse, and you
Yes.
use the keyboard to fly the
Yes.
airplane.
It was, it was that so it was Migs Field is that airport you're referring
I think
to,
so, yeah.
which is
Mhm.
right came out into Lake Michigan. Now, do you know the story of Migs Field, how it ended?
I don't think so.
All right, so this is fascinating because I was growing up in Portland, Oregon, doing flight simulator, Chicago, take off, looking at the Sears Tower. Years later, I end up in Chicago. That's where I am now. And I started flying planes. And I was like, oh, where was this Migs Field? And somebody says, listen, it's a crazy story. Mayor Daley decided that he didn't want Migs Field there anymore. He thought it was a security risk. I think it was his wife was like, that's a security risk. I think 9/11 had just
Yeah,
happened.
right,
Well, Daley says, yeah, we're getting rid of it. Well, the FAA has a little stake in it. The federal government has a little stake in it.
right.
And so they say, nope, sorry, you're not getting rid of it. It's not your call. Well, Daley is not messing around. Just a normal night, planes landing and staying overnight. He goes out there with bulldozers and
Bulldozers. I
jackhammers,
remember this story, yeah.
right?
Yes.
Jackhammers big X's in the runway. It's like, dude, you asshole. There's people's planes are there, not just like big $1 million jets. Like some dude's little $40,000 Cessna 172 is there.
Little
He doesn't
private
have the
planes.
money to get that thing extracted. So just
Yeah, he
crazy.
goes out there and ruins the landing strip so they can't land or take
Oh,
off, I guess, yeah.
that's exactly right. Oh, it's
I
hilarious. But
remember seeing that on the news, yeah. Daly, boy, you didn't mess with him. He did
no,
what
you
he
did
wanted.
not. No, you did not. Now let's fast forward 15 years, 1999.
Okay,
Now just I never knew anything about computers. Like I was the last to go, but I'm sitting in my house on like some random day in 1999 and I'm screwing around with my computer and I deleted something I should have and I go on Craigslist and I say, I need somebody to help me fix my computer. This guy Pete comes over and he fixes it. And I was like, oh, that's cool, dude. Thanks. And he was there for like 5 hours. We were just bullshitting and talking, having a good time. And I said, "What do I owe you?" And he says, like, $30. I'm like, "Well, you were here all day, man." He goes, "Well, I only did a couple hours." I said, "Well, what's your hourly rate?" He says, whatever he said, $20 an hour or
Yeah.
something. And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah.
If I go out and sell your services and give you 20 bucks an hour, can I keep whatever else?" He's like, "Sure, I don't give a shit." So that's how I built my company, was
There you
finding a
go.
bunch of guys like Pete, still never knew a thing, and all the things. But just like you had some moment, I'm sure. My moment was getting Pete in over his head, needing to call someone else in town to help, and the guy says, "Oh, it'll be $150." And I'm like, "Oh, 150 bucks. That's great." So he goes and does all this work, taking a couple days. I'm like, "Hell yeah, $150." I meet him in the parking lot. The guy's still in business. I don't know. He don't think he likes me. He should. I
Yeah.
was a great client for him, but uh, I'm like, "Yeah, man, time to pay you. Thanks a lot for your work. Here's your check for $150." He's like, What are you talking about?
Yeah.
150? It's 150 an hour."
An hour.
I'm
Yes.
like, "I'm
Yes.
charging 75." Holy, so just one of those light bulbs. Do you have a light bulb moment where you're like, "Oh, it could be done this way"? Any of those memories?
Yeah, I remember back in those days, in the early '80s at least, the high-end guys were charging like $50 an hour.
Yeah, yeah,
And the weird thing was, it didn't go up very much for a really long time. When I first started in '99, my hourly rate was 75 an hour. Okay, I charged 65 if you were a nonprofit. I had a good number of nonprofits because I had a heart for nonprofits, okay? And then one day I was helping this dentist who was really he was a businessman too, and he had a bunch of dental practices. And he said to me one day, he said, "You're not charging enough." He said, "You are just not charging enough." And and he goes, "Don't apologize for your rates." And I said, "You know what? Your rate just went up."
yeah.
So
He's
I
like,
went
"Not
to,
me."
over the years, I went from 75 to 85 to 95 to 105 to 115 to 125 to 135 to 155 to 175, which is where we are today. Okay. So
Right.
over the years, we've had to raise our prices. But um, when I realized that every minute I was working, I could bill for my time. I was generating 40 early days when I first got started. I was generating 40, 50 hours a week of billable time.
Yes.
That is really good money back then, especially, and, I didn't mind working late because
Right.
the meter was still running,
Yep.
and I never charged people time and a half after 5 o'clock or whatever. But when I first got started, I would be like, if you call me in the afternoon or in the morning, I will be there that day. I got keys to everybody's office and I knew
Yeah.
all of their alarm codes. And it
Yes.
may be 7 o'clock at night before I get to your office, but I
That's how
will
we
get
did
in
it
there
too. Yeah.
and I will finish it. And when you come in the next morning, it will be fixed. So I had a real reputation for getting it done. Or people
I
could
didn't
really
see
depend
any
on.
other way back then. Like like I said, I was just reselling a bunch of guys' time. And like you, it's like, well, ours was like, "Hey, these guys have normal jobs. They'll be here after 6 o'clock." So I had this whole big thing with all these keys in it and
Yep.
all that kind of stuff. My
Yep.
biggest security risk was, what if somebody got a hold of the keys? But
Yeah.
okay, let me ask you this. My mentor Larry always told me this. I just didn't live through it. He said, in the late 80s, early 90s, the theory for IT solution providers was, you mark up the product so heavily and you give away the time.
Mhm.
And he said that transition started happening in the late 90s, where it's like people had to catch up and say, margins are shrinking. I
Right.
better be billing for my time. How true was that in your experience?
Yeah, I always build for my time. And so what I would do, and I would tell people, listen, I say, listen, I sell hardware as a service. Okay. You can go out and buy yourself if you want, but I like to sell it because I sell good stuff. I don't want you to go out and buy junk and then bring it in here and it dies in a year. So I got a relationship with a computer builder in town that actually made machines, and then I got a little logo made, and they put our logo on it. So it was a clone machine, but they couldn't go out and price me online. Like if I
That's right.
sold them Dell or whatever, they could just type in a part number and find it somewhere cheaper. Okay,
Sure.
so I started selling clone machines, and I didn't mark them up too much. I mean, I may have she's 20, 30% maybe. I mean, that's a lot, but I mean, it wasn't like I really jacked up the price. But I said,
Right.
now look, the machine's going to cost you this, but it's going to take me 4 to 6 hours to install it. Okay.
Right.
So just be prepared. The meter's going to be running the whole time I'm in there installing the machine and all the software and everything you need. Okay. There were no service contracts back then. You just did it by the hour. If you buy 4 or 5 machines, I'll install them all, but the meter's running the whole time. I didn't do a flat rate per machine or anything. So, um, yeah, I made money on hardware, but it wasn't, when the internet came out and everybody's in the world was selling hardware, I would tell people you're going to go broke just trying to sell hardware. I can tell you that right now
Mhm.
because somebody's going to beat your price online. Said service is what they can't. You can't do service remotely. It's got to be done, there. Okay. Now
Right.
today you can do a lot of service remotely, but
Right.
it was mainly the billable hours. I was really looking for billable hours the most.
So we're a couple of old heads, and I'm gonna run this theory by you, and I want you to disagree if you disagree. But if you
Okay.
disagree, we're gonna have some fun with it.
Okay.
Um, I look at my clients, I look at the industry as a whole, and just there's this pervasive thing there. People say hourly is bad. I hate hourly. Hourly is bad. I hear that constantly, and heard it for the last
Right.
15 years now.
Right.
And my argument always is, if you love recurring revenue, I also love recurring revenue, but I'm not interested in your opinion of hourly if you don't know your agreement gross profit
Right.
cold.
Right.
Then look back and say, well, let's go back to 2005. Let's go back
Mm.
to 2004.
Right.
If you hated hourly then because it was hard to track.
Mhm.
You didn't
Mhm.
have a ConnectWise or an Autotask to
Right.
enter your time very cleanly against a ticket.
Right.
When we were all running hourly,
Right.
profitability was not an issue.
Right. Right.
Profitability today is so hard for many MSPs.
It is. It is.
And I think the vendors, God bless them all, we wouldn't be here without them, but we also wouldn't be here without them. Like
Mhm.
the story of getting managed services online was so heavy and so well marketed
Right.
that people kind of threw out what was working,
Yep.
drank the Kool-Aid of
Yep.
hourly stupid. Well,
Mhm.
of course they're going to say that. They want you to buy more
They want you to
licenses.
buy more stuff. Yeah.
So we kind of threw out some common sense along the way,
Yeah.
and now I can see that clock unwinding a little bit, but that's kind of Josh's take on MSPs at
No,
a
I
macro.
agree with you. It was very hard because I've been sold managed services. Oh, you got to do managed services. It was very hard to move from break fix to managed services. Okay. Because I knew that every minute my guys were out there, I started hiring people about my third year in, and we were doing $1 million a year in sales by our sixth year in business. Okay. So it's like, I got to keep these guys busy because I got these contracts out there, and we're not billing hourly for them. But and these tools, they're not super expensive, one license, but you add that by 100 or 1,000 or 1,500, it gets real expensive real fast. Now we can do a whole lot more than we used to, and you can do a lot more remotely than you used to, but those tools can get real expensive and they're always trying to sell you something new. You go to a trade show, there's 100 vendors there. And, times were simpler when we first got started. I couldn't necessarily remote in. I would have to come out on site. Eventually, I would get, they had very weak internet connections, but I would remote into the server. And I had a program, I believe it wasn't Carbon Copy, but it was similar to that. I could remote into the server with it. And then if I had a copy of it running on a workstation, I could go from the server to the workstation and work remotely then. Um, but it was really a different world back in the hourly days. The way we do it today is if you're a small client, we'll put our tools on your machines for X amount. Okay. But if you call us or remote in, the meter is on. Okay. We only do that for really small clients. So, I'm talking 10 machines and under. Okay.
Right.
And we never used to even take somebody on there unless they had at least 10 machines and a server. But, so, people are not, well, more and more stuff's online. They don't always have servers. So, we'll take on some small clients because, 5 small clients equals a big client, if you think about it. And the tools are there to do almost everything remotely. So we just, we bill hourly when we need to. Now, if you have a managed service client and they need a new server, I used to tell them that we'll bill you hourly to put in the server because I can't tell you exactly how long it's going to take. Well, I got burned a couple of times on that because they got real upset that it did take so long and it cost so much money. So then we started estimating our time. I said, look, well, then and they made another mistake. I said, I'm going to sell you 30 hours of time to put this server in or reconfigure it or whatever I got to do. But then if they saw that it only took 20, then they didn't want to pay the rest of it. Okay. So
Right.
now
Right.
I just say, all right, here's the server price and here's the install. And that's the two together. That's it. Okay. So if it takes me a lot longer than I think, I'll break even or lose money, but I'm not going to
Right.
charge you more than what I told you. Okay.
Right.
Because in the early days, sometimes it would take a lot of time because computers didn't run as fast, and it would take a lot of hours,
Yes.
and I actually quoted a guy a new server once, and, I would just quote all the server at the bottom. The very last line at the bottom, it said installation is additional. And for some reason, he didn't see that. And so he paid for the server and then he got a bill for the labor. And he's like, what is this? And I go, I told you, look at the line. He's like, oh, I didn't see that. And he was like, he didn't want to pay it all, but he eventually did. But, it's just, you got to set that right expectation with the customer. This is what it's going to cost. Okay.
Right.
I've seen some MSPs, they'll do one server for a client every 5 years and they charge an enormous fee to install it. And I don't like doing that. I don't like gouging my clients. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, what I used to do in the early days of billable time, I just had a piece of paper in my pocket. I always had a
Right.
business shirt with a pocket on it. So
Right.
I would come out, I would do the work, and I would write down on there what I did, and I put it
Yep.
back in my pocket. And so all day long, I'm bang, 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 bang. I'd come home at night and give the piece of paper to my wife, and she would do the billing.
Nice.
I either gave
Nice.
it to her daily or weekly, but I would just write on there what all I did, and she would go into QuickBooks and make the invoice.
That's beautiful.
And that was just, it was simple, it worked, and even when I started hiring, employees, we had developed a shared Outlook calendar. So the guys
Mm-hmm.
would get up every morning, look at their calendar, where do I need to go? And then they would just go back into the calendar, go to ABC company at 10 o'clock. And then they
Yeah.
would go back into that same calendar and type in what they did and how long they were there. And then my bookkeeper, administrator, she would cut and paste that into a QuickBooks invoice. Okay.
You know what's so funny about that is that um you tell us about that shared Outlook calendar and you probably made that up for yourself and
Yeah, we did.
uh I've heard no less than 200 people tell me that same thing and I
Mhm.
always love it because it's like back then you had to invent a solution to a
Yes,
problem.
we did.
You weren't going to trade shows and going meeting this guy and that guy. So it was just amazing how many people were smart enough to figure out these little answers. And then later you find out like, oh, everyone figured something out, whatever it was. It's really neat, the
Yeah,
kind
if
of
you stop and think
collective
about it, we kind of invented an industry. I mean, the
100%.
MSP world, we
100%.
basically, it was a brand new industry. And,
Yes.
it was just not something that had been around for a long time. So we did have to do those little hacks and things like that to get our clients, serviced.
You know what's amazing, Tim, is that we work with, I think right now we've probably worked with like 13 or 15 copier dealers. And we got to know these folks really, really well over the last 5 years. And, I'm not an MSP. So if, prior to meeting these guys, if my clients are like, oh, copier dealers suck, they're the worst. I'm like, yeah, copier dealers suck, they're the worst. And then I meet them and I'm like, okay, these guys are like really smart. They're family businesses. They really give a shit. So we start working with them and it's like talking to them was like talking to 1999 again. They get so frustrated because in copier world, that is such a well-defined industry of exactly how everyone does everything
Hmm.
that when they come into this MSP world, they're like, there's no standard. There's no, like, how everyone does it. It's impossible. So we're having to make shit up and they're losing money like crazy. It's like, "Oh, yeah, there is no playbook." Like, it would have been great if they found your book somewhere because
Yeah.
they would say, "No, it has been written," but they're not wrong. Everyone does something just a little different. So when they're trying to learn how to do it in 2020 or 2022, it's like they feel the way we all felt in 1999 of
But yeah.
there's
Yeah.
no playbook.
I really recommend if you're an MSP watching this, make a relationship with a copier guy. Okay. He can be a great lead source for you. Okay. Especially Find a copier company that's independently owned and that they don't also do MSP work. Now, some of them do. Okay. So then he's not going to give you leads, but you say, listen, every business I go into, I'll take a picture of their copier and I'll send it to you. And I always say there's, what was it, 3 guarantees: like death, taxes, or a phone call from my copier guy the minute I send him that photograph.
That's
But
right.
it gives him a leg up because now he knows what the customer has. And
That's
usually
right.
there's a little sticker on there, who's servicing it. And he knows if he can beat their price, whatever. And in my sales presentation for MSPs, I always say, hey, who does your copiers? We don't do them, but I got a great guy. He's very honest. He'll take care of you. And I'm telling you, every time I gave that guy a lead, he eventually got them a copier. Okay.
That's
But
awesome.
then he
That's
goes into places and say, hey, who does your IT? I got a guy. So I've networked with him for 20 years. Great guy.
that's the move. It is, and it is, my vantage point right now is there's no bigger threat to $1 million MSP than the local copier dealer.
Hmm.
'Cause those guys, they've been trying to figure it out for 8, 10, 15 years now. They're getting it, and they've got money, they've got great management teams,
Yep.
they've got structure,
They got
and
relationships with
they got
clients.
relationships.
Yep.
The only piece they were missing was just how to kinda deliver those services and find the right techs. They weren't doing a quote unquote "bad job" because they didn't give a shit. They just didn't know what a good tech looked like.
Right.
And boy,
Right.
they're learning quick.
Yeah.
We've got
Yeah.
we've got here in Chicagoland a massive company. If you ever fly into O'Hare and you're leaving, you're gonna see this softball field and their name is right there.
Wow.
They got so big. I think they're close to 75 million in their MSP.
Wow.
I remember not too long ago when they were 5 million.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I watched them take that step where it's like, we really can't serve anyone under 2,500 a month,
Hmm.
then 5, then 10. I
Mm.
think they're like at 12.5 now, where it's
Wow.
like
Wow.
any MSP I know would kill for
Yeah.
any of that,
Sure.
work. So you're right. Make good friends with your local copier dealer,
Yeah,
especially.
absolutely. Now, did that company, were they a copier company and then
Yeah,
started
yeah.
doing MSP
Yeah.
services?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they come into it just like anyone else. They either try to build it on their own or they buy somebody locally. And that first purchase for them typically goes a little sideways because no one kind of knows what they want or what they're buying.
Right.
Once they figure it out, they go. But yeah, the important part of the story is, yeah, they are a copier dealer.
Sure. And they have relationships with those clients already, and they know what they need, and adding on MSP services is really not super difficult for them, but they just need to make sure they hire the right people to run it because the
Yeah,
copier business is different than, the managed service.
completely different.
It's
That
really, and
that's what was hanging them up, is that just learning fast enough that this is a totally different business. Like,
yes.
there's nothing,
Yeah, there's really
there's
nothing
no
that compares.
carryover.
Yeah, the only comparison is, the actual service on the machine. But copier guys, usually the repair guys for copiers are not the same. They're not IT guys.
No, no, no. They know they've got 7.5 minutes to replace that part or
Right.
14 minutes to replace that part. They're not there to
Yeah,
diagnose at a high level and stick
exactly.
with it. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're an MSP, try to find an independent copier guy that doesn't do MSP work and doesn't necessarily want to because he's a copier guy. He doesn't want to get into it. And then you guys trade leads back and forth,
That's
and
right.
and just make sure that he stays that way. But more power to him. If he wants to get into this business, go for it. But I'll tell you, if you're not an IT guy, I would not get into this business.
We'll be right back with more. But first, here's a quick message from Bering McKinley.
Most MSPs are constantly busy, chasing tickets, projects, and fires. But without structure, it's hard to know if the business is really improving. Vision from Bering McKinley is the system that helps you work on your business, not just in it. It connects leadership strategy with daily execution. Vision aligns people, process, and performance, creating clarity and rhythm from goals to results. And the Vision app brings that structure to life, helping you create policies, track goals, review KPIs, and collaborate with your BMK consultant all in one place. Behind it all, Jetson AI, your assistant inside Vision, helps you find answers, generate insights, and take action faster. With Vision, you gain visibility, accountability, and measurable growth. You're not guessing, you're improving. Vision, Jetson, and the Vision app, your path from strategy to results. Start transforming your business today.
All right, let's get back to the conversation.
because you will not understand it. You will not understand it. So
Let's segue into this. What's your take on the state of sales for MSPs here in 2025? What's going right? What's not going right? And why?
well, it depends on the market that you're in. Okay. Now I'm in the Orlando area. Okay. When I first started, there were two MSPs in town that I knew about. I was like the third MSP. I was probably the third MSP to ever get a website, which means you were a going concern, and it was like I've got guys that I know that are out not in the sticks, but they're out there,
Right.
small towns and that type of thing. You won't have as much competition, but you've got a lot of blue collar type companies and things like that. And then maybe a big industry will move out there because the land is cheap, but they're big and they're probably going to have their own staff. You know what I mean? So the main thing is how you present it to people. When they look, I got 30 computers in here, I got 50 computers in here. I need help. Okay. And I tell them, look, we're less expensive than you hiring your own staff. And then you can't just hire one, you got to hire two. Because what if the guy gets sick or quits or gets recruited away? You bring us in and you've got a whole team of people behind you, and we're there all the time. And you're not going to run into something we haven't seen. I can promise you. We've been doing this a long time. We know what we're doing. And even if you're new, you can say, well, I've been in this business for a long time, not necessarily owning your own business. But you just got to present a number to them and that this is the way we do our services. This is what we're going to provide for you. This is what it's going to cost. We developed a really nice little sales brochure that kind of goes through all of our services. And at the end, they can literally add it up themselves, what they want. Okay. But, cybersecurity software is helping sell managed services now because we won't have a client that doesn't have our cybersecurity software on there because it's just, at least an EDR, it's just too risky not to have that anymore. So you've got to charge the right price. One of the big things I see with the really small MSPs is they don't charge enough. They absolutely do not charge enough. I'd say most of their limitation is between their ears. They don't think that they are worth it to charge that much just because they're small. No, that's not true. My son threw the baseball through the window one day years ago. He and his buddy were out there playing. The guy that came over and replaced the glass charged me $100 and something an hour, and he had 3 teeth. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I don't, I don't think for 1 minute what we do is not super valuable. And it's like, well, these business owners, well, these computer guys, all right, just turn all the computers off and see how long you can stay in business. You know what I mean?
Right.
They just can't function without it anymore. You just got to hit the right price and go after the right clients. Okay.
So what do you think in terms of like just the like let me ask you this. How many MSPs what do you use for a number of MSPs in the US? Generally, what do you
how many are there?
Yeah.
I think I think I saw a number either 3,500 or 4,500 or 5,500. It's
Okay.
in that
Okay.
range. There's quite a
Okay.
few actually.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll use your number. The number I typically hear is 40 to 50,000, but depending on how
Well,
you want to slice and dice it.
maybe it was 55,000. I don't remember.
Okay. So of that, what would you say the average revenue size is of an MSP in North America or in the US today?
I've heard that 90% of MSPs never break $1 million a year in sales.
All right. So we're using the same numbers. Okay.
So they're low numbers, maybe 300,000, maybe 400, maybe 500,000. But if it's 500,000, you have two employees, that's fairly good revenue.
It's a nice business. There's no
It
problem
is.
with that.
You can pay
Yeah.
yourself a good salary,
Yeah.
pay your people okay, but you are married to it. I mean, if you're very small, you have to do a lot. The more hats you wear, the more profit you're going to have. But you also have to look at your own self, your life, your family interaction, how much time are you spending away from the office, and your own mental state. You know what I mean? Can you handle all that much work? You know what I mean?
So with that, 90%, I think that's a really fair number being sub $1 million. We work with lots of, 1 million, 500,000, 2 million. We work with everyone in there. majority, almost all say, I want to get bigger. I want to go bigger. I want to get to 5 million. I want to get to 6 million.
Sure.
So that's just kind of, our observation. Why do you think those that want to grow aren't growing?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. Okay. First of all, the mindset. Okay. The mindset of you got to charge enough. You got to be not afraid to go after larger clients. Okay. Even if you don't have the staff right now, you hire quickly. You're going to meet that need. Try it. Okay. And, I say ABS, always be selling. Okay. You've got to constantly, as the owner, be selling your services. You've got to go to business leads groups. You got to go to chambers of commerce meetings. I was at a golf thing the other day. We had a table on the ninth tee, and everybody coming by would talk to us. You've got to do those things because meeting you one-on-one, we're an expensive, complicated product. People have to trust you. You have the keys to the kingdom you have your hands in everything. Sometimes I say, your IT guy, we're in your underwear. We see the good and the bad.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
you have to have the mindset, everybody wants to get bigger. Well, here's the point. Everybody wants to make more money. Now, whether getting bigger will make you more money is up for debate. Okay. If you don't charge enough, you could actually be losing money. You know what I mean? I've heard you could have a restaurant full of 100 people at lunch and they could be breaking even. Okay. But you got a small restaurant that's got 20 people and he's doing really great. Okay. Because he's figured out what to charge and keeps his costs down. Okay.
right,
So,
right.
it's that mindset of not being afraid to try to go after larger clients, be organized, watch your time. You can waste enormous amount of time on stuff. And I meet guys sometimes and they're not making any money. And I talk to them every year. They change their PSA. Every year they change their RMM. Every year they change this, that, and the other. And IT guys like to play with stuff. So, oh, here's a new product. I want to play with that. No, no, no. You just wasted 3 days playing with a product that, first of all, you could have been out either on billable time or out there selling your services to somebody else. And then, yeah, this one has a little bit better options than the one I'm using now. That's an enormous change to make. It takes forever. It costs you a lot of time and money, you know? So find a good product and stick with it. All of them run good or they wouldn't be able to sell it. Maybe it's not perfect. Maybe it's got a problem here and there. And I always tell people, if you're going to change your PSA, there needs to be an overwhelming reason to do that because that is the heartbeat of your company. Okay.
Yes.
Don't go between a different PSA every year or so. We've changed PSAs one time since we started. Okay.
Yeah.
And, it's just not worth it. You know what I mean? And don't spend 6 hours because you found a little bitty problem and screaming and yelling at their tech support because this
Yeah.
one little tiny thing doesn't work that you're going to use once in a blue moon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's an enormous waste of your time and energy. Enormous
That's right.
waste. You know?
That's right.
So I talk to guys all the time. We don't have any problems with the tools we use. There may be a little thing here and there, but we don't focus on it. I talk to guys, oh, it's a terrible product. I got rid of it. Oh, it's a terrible product. What was terrible about it? Well, the third Monday of every, fourth month, it would do this. No, and if that is not enough of a reason to move.
Right. And here's the, again, observations. It's in the same day, I can talk to, 5, 6 different MSPs. And if it's the right day, I'll get on one call and somebody's like, nah, ConnectWise, piece of shit. We're going to Halo. Oh, okay. Good for you. Then, 3 hours later, it's, oh, we were on PSA. We moved to Halo. Halo's a piece of shit. We're moving back to PSA. It's like, listen, whatever tool you hate is working fine for someone else. Whatever tool you think is going to be better, someone
Right.
else hates.
Yes,
Just
that is true.
stop. Because the whole machine of the vendors
Yes.
at this stage, they're just trading licenses.
Mm-hmm.
Stop feeding that beast because it
Mhm.
is just a beast of
It is.
they're making money on the re-onboardings, the different licensing from when you changed last time.
Yep.
Just it's cannibalistic. And we know, and our evidence of that is the amount of swapping that goes on, but we do, several hundred implementations for ConnectWise every year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like we watch them like 10 years ago, maybe 2% of the RMMs or PSAs we were doing implementations for were for internal IT.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like 35, 50%.
Mm.
So it's like they're having to reach into internal ITs, which is
Yeah.
awesome. Great
Yeah.
move for them. But they've saturated the MSPs. You have a PSA, and when we get a brand new, you know, ConnectWise PSA implementation, it's like, oh, what'd you move from?
Mhm.
Anymore, it's very rare to hear, oh, we built something, we're finally getting rid of it.
Right.
You're coming from somewhere else,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
to your
Exactly.
point, yeah, don't switch those.
Well, and
So
the mindset of technical people, which we are, okay, is you like playing with tools,
that's
okay?
it right there.
So
Yeah.
they will spend enormous amounts of time. I call it the shiny object syndrome too. They go to a trade
Yes.
show, they see an object, oh, I got to try that out. They bring it back and they work on it for days and days and days, and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. How much time did you spend on that you were not out looking for more business?
Uh-huh.
Okay? If you don't, if you are not growing, you are slowly liquidating. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, that's the truth. We have about a $2.5 million business. Okay. And I'm telling you, I have focused on growth from day one. Okay. Now, well, I've had all the horror stories you can have, bad employees, bad customers, and you name it, I've been through it. Okay. And, getting a big, expensive client can look really great to a salesperson, but it could kill your staff. Okay. But
Yes.
but I spend the time, I spend the energy to go out there, hire the people you need to hire to do the technical work. You are the owner. You need to be out there making it happen. And people love it when they get to talk to the owner of the company. And I'm not back fiddling with ConnectWise, trying to get it to do this, that, or the other. I am
Right.
out there making money. Okay. And that's
Yes.
what you have to do. The way you make money is get more clients, you know,
That's right.
and don't charge the right price, get more clients, charge the right price, and don't pay too much for tools.
That's it.
And
That's
don't
it.
have every tool on the planet because you don't need them.
And I'll tell you, I'll be the first to tell you, we've the last 5 years, we've always just been a management consulting firm with an expertise in ConnectWise Manage. And then we brought this awesome gentleman in who is an expert in Automate. And it's like, oh, you're our first technical employee at Bering McKinley. And he's awesome, very mature, all the wonderful things. But he's still a tech at heart. And as he gets into this consulting world, he's like, that tool right there, we could monetize solutions around that.
Mhm.
And that tool right there, we could, and that tool and that tool. And if we get this tool, we can dashboard
Mhm.
ourselves even better. And it's like, I look back the last 5 years and I'm like, oh, I just behaved like the worst MSP behavior because a tech guy is so compelling and they're so,
Right.
certain. And it's like, I hadn't been trained on how to kind of
Yeah.
navigate
Yeah.
without falling victim to it.
Right. Right.
I definitely did not know how to say no. Probably
Yeah.
still, but
Well, I have a friend of mine that has an MSP in Ohio, and I was talking to him. He wasn't making a ton of money, and he's got like 8 employees. And, you know, we I found out who his most expensive employee is, okay? And he was an old friend of his, but the guy's really good. He actually was in the military, worked in, like cybersecurity for the military and all this stuff. I said, "Well, what does he do for you?" He goes, "Well, he tests out all the new products we want to try for next year." He spends all day fiddling with this stuff. And they may use it and they may not. And he's the highest paid person that he has. And I go,
wow.
do you I mean, if he is not paying at least his salary back in billable time or something, then you are losing an enormous amount of money with him. And this guy
Yes.
goes to every trade show and every, the owner does, and he finds the products, brings them back to him and has him test it and see if they want to put it in or not. He does
It's
not
a big
have the money to
investment.
do this. And this is why he's breaking even, because he's paying this guy a ton of money to basically live in la la land because he gets to fiddle with new stuff every day. But there's just
Hard
no
to watch.
reason for that.
No, no,
No, there's
that's
no business reason for it,
no.
Not in the
That's
long
funny.
run.
Yeah. Now that's probably some version of that is a very common story, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's it. It's it.
And a lot of times
Oh,
the owner will be the guy fiddling with it. It's like,
oh
look,
yeah.
you don't have the time for this. You don't, staff yourself up with good administrator, good people that can run kind of the day-to-day of the office, and then get out there and get more business. And tech people tend to be like, oh, I don't know how to sell. I don't want to go out and sell. Okay. So they give themselves so much work at the office. Oh, I can't get to the selling. I got to test this product. Okay. Let me tell you something. The customer is going to believe the technician before they're going to believe the salesman. Okay. They know when they're being sold to. A slick salesman, he might talk them into something, but when a technician comes in there, they pick it up really fast and they know that he's telling them the truth because he didn't, he's not super fancy. He's like, look, this is what we're going to give you. This is what it's going to do for you. And this is what we're going to charge. Okay. And technicians say they can't sell. That's just not true. They
Right.
can't.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, you're dead on. Tim, let me ask you this. Let's start winding down. I want to get your take on a couple of things. Um, if an MSP can only focus on two, maybe three, I'll give you three kind of key target KPI numbers,
Mhm.
whether from the balance sheet, the P&L, the PSA, what would your go-to three be?
Okay. Now I'm more of a salesman personality, but and I'm a technician. I'm a good technician and a good salesman. Okay. I'm not a finance guy. If you're not that guy, hire somebody who is, or outsource it. Okay. You need to be looking at your P&L every month, probably every week. Okay. You need to know if you're making money and where you're making it. Okay. And what was the second part of your question?
So really, it's just your three
Right.
KPIs. If for
Right.
any business owner, what would
All
your
right.
big three
The
be?
utilization of your staff. Okay. Now I got managed service contracts. We don't bill by the hour. So I'm not requiring my guys to put their, they don't have a timesheet because, they're just working on tickets. Well, they don't have to fill out everything they did on that ticket because we're going to bill them the same thing anyway. No, no, no. You need to know the utilization of your staff. Okay. If they're running at 60% and you got three of them, you probably don't need one of them.
Right.
Okay. Uh, if you start telling them to justify every minute of what they're doing, okay, then you're going to find out a whole lot more about what's going on. However, they're IT people. They don't like to be micromanaged. Okay. They don't want to clock in and clock out when they go to the bathroom. All right. So you got to be realistic about it. But at the same time, you have to know those numbers. Are you overstaffed? Are you understaffed? You'll know if you're understaffed because your guys are always going to be screaming they need help. Okay.
Right.
You're not going to know it if you're overstaffed right off the bat. But if
Right.
everybody's just happy all the time and everything happy-go-lucky, you probably have too many staff.
Fair.
So watch your bottom line, and then basically how many proposals do you have out there? What does your funnel look like? Okay, you've got to keep that funnel full. Don't go out and spend $1 million on marketing with third-party companies. I'm just telling you that right now. Okay, I have done it over the years. You have to do some of it. Okay, you have to do some SEO or something online. But these marketing companies, they're very good at selling things. They'll come in there and convince you got to pay them $5,000 a month to do marketing. Now, if you're a big company, that's a good number. If you're a small company, you cannot afford it. You know what doesn't cost anything? Go into a business leads group, accept your time. Go into after hours events and mingling with people. Just talk to them. Okay. Go to chambers of commerce events, and go to your chamber, your local chamber, and say, hey, I can do a lunch and learn. I can speak about cybersecurity. I can speak about what you reach out to me. I've got tons of PowerPoints already done, presentations already done. Put your name on it and go in there and do it. Okay. You just follow the slide. It's really easy to make a presentation. And suddenly you are the expert because you made a presentation. And people will come up to you afterwards, okay? And they'll say, hey, I want to talk to you. Come look at my network or whatever, okay? So you've got to spend time doing those things. So KPI is how many potential clients are in your hopper, how many are like first-time appointments every month, have a metric. First-time appointments, how many proposals given, how much hardware did I sell? Those are things extremely important. What is the productivity of my staff? And what is my P&L? Those are the top three things I would say.
I love it. Those are beautiful, man. I love those. Well, Tim, it's a pleasure getting to know you here on the podcast. I'm glad that you joined. Where can people find you out there?
Well, one of the things I did when I started my business, I looked for a book, How to Start and Run a Successful IT Company. I mentioned that earlier. I couldn't find it. So I finally wrote it myself. It's out
Nice.
there. You can go to timtaylorconsulting.com and you can get a copy of the book. I also have a consulting practice. I only work with small MSPs, maybe up to 3 or 4 employees, maybe 5. If you're bigger than that, Bering's your guy or there are other consultants. But especially if you're just starting out and you just don't know what to do. I was talking to a guy once and he goes, what is a PSA? And I was like, oh Lord, we're really starting at ground zero. Okay. So, but I've helped guys. Guy I talked about in Ohio, when I first met him, he told me he was 3 weeks away from throwing in the towel. Okay. He said, I can't do this anymore. He's going to do 2 million this year. And that was I think it was 4 or 5 years ago when I met him. Okay. So you can reach out to me, Taylor at timtaylorconsulting.com. And I'd love to help you out if I can.
Yeah.
There's no problem that you will have that I have not seen, my friend. I promise you.
Right on. Tim, thank you very much for joining us. And everyone else, please make sure to like, share, subscribe if we earned it. It means a big, big difference to us as we try to grow this channel. So thanks, everyone.
All
Bye,
right.
Tim.
Thanks.